Welcome back, class. Welcome to week 2. Today we're going to be covering in a number of topics, and this specific lecture is going to focus on operations strategy, specifically around aligning operations with business strategy. In additional lectures this week, we're going to be talking about truly how people make decisions, and then having a brief overview around the Lego case study, which is part of assignment 1. As we start to step through aligning operations with business strategy, I want each of you to think about some of the organizations that you've worked with in the past. Some of you have worked for larger organizations. I know a number of you work for the university. And others have also been exposed to smaller startup organizations. I personally have worked for a startup and found it to struggle. And a lot of it was truly not aligning their operations with their strategy. It became really about how to look at what customers needed, and there wasn't a true business model. When I talk about business models, I'm essentially looking at 4 key items that stand out for me. And I'm going to spend a little bit of time talking about each. The first thing that really jumps out at me is the why. There's a great book out that's called Starts with Why. It was written by Simon Sinek, and it really outlines how great leaders inspire everyone to take action. It looks at such items as, what does Apple really try to do? Does Apple try to make computers, or does Apple try to have a unique customer experience? When I look at the customer value proposition as part of a business model, that is supposed to answer that very question. What is the customer supposed to accomplish, and what is the specific task or outcome that you want them to do? I work a lot with learning management systems, and the value proposition typically for those product companies is to enhance the user experience or to provide easy access and easy collaboration. As we're stepping through a lot of this, I'm going to ask you around the different cases that you're reading for the different companies, what is the value proposition of what those organizations are trying to do? Because understanding the value proposition is going to allow you to really see what is driving the decisions. The same comes to the next item that we've highlighted, which is key resources. Truly understanding what is required in order to deliver that value proposition. Apple was not able to deliver and design the iPhone and the iMac and the iPad and the iPod and every item that you can think of without having very creative designers, without having very uniquely skilled and qualified people to bring forth that experience. You can't have a good architecture firm without good architects. Identifying who the key resources are as part of your business model will allow you to grow the organization. Additionally, making sure that you have the right processes in place is critical, because you're not going to be able to, if you do manage to have that one big bright idea and you're selling it out in the space and you're trying to make things work and you're making decisions around it, if you don't have the right processes in place, you're not going to be able to sustain your business in a repeatable and efficient and manageable way. As we look at a number of reasons around decisions and around operations management, we tie those items together, but with this last bullet, it really stands out. Profit formula. How are you going to go about having this make money? What about this is going to bring value to the organization? What about it's going to really give you the understanding of your cost structure and your margins? And where are you going to be able to manage inventory? I look at my wrist while I'm talking right now, and I have a Nike Fuel Band. Most of you have seen that in class. And I look at some of the decisions that Nike made related to getting out of making the Fuel Band. Great idea, great concept, great industry, but they've realized that they're not a technology company. They're not an equipment and hardware company. They're a sporting goods company. So for them, they looked at their numbers and their profits and realized that they didn't have the processes in place to be repeatable success, the profit formula in place, or the right resources to deliver on what was a great value proposition. So if I'm looking at this from a customer perspective, if I'm looking at this from a service organizations, how do I, with my team of people in both the US and abroad, maximize the value proposition? For me, I look at what is it that I'm trying to accomplish. What is the specific need in the market that is not being satisfied, and how do I satisfy that need? My US team deals specifically and heavily with learning management systems, and we've set ourselves up specifically to not only be a leader in learning management system delivery, but also, since we have such a large population of government customers, to focus on regulated customers and security requirements. Because this has allowed us to put an offering together that allows us to do it better than companies to do that work on their own. And as we're writing that offering together, we oftentimes have to look at things from the customer's perspective. How is what I'm offering my customers maximizing their time? Is what I'm offering my customer, the service that I'm offering, will it satisfy customer needs? How do my customers get that? And then how do they pay for it? You'll hear a lot of things online about software as a service and the cloud. A lot of what we do is offer cloud solutions. And it makes it easy for me when I'm talking to customers about their value proposition, the ease of access to getting to their systems, the ease of a monthly payment per seats. There's a lot of different ways when you're looking at goods and services, especially in larger services organizations, around making sure that you're making it easy to access and easy to pay for. Now, I talked about profit formula in terms of ideas, and the startup that I worked for didn't really have a good model. They understood the services that they were trying to do, but they really didn't have a good, solid revenue model or a solid cost structure. So I look at some of the startups that, let's for example talk about companies that build apps. And a company that builds apps for iPhones and Android devices, there's a lot of them out there. And only takes one great idea like Words with Friends to make an organization a lot of money. But understanding how to price Words with Friends or Trivia Crack or any of the other apps that are out there to know what you can sell it at and what you can make money at is critical. And you'll be dealing with price points across the board. No one out there wants to spend $7.99 on an app for your iPhone. You're all wanting to spend 99 cents or $1. And the question becomes, how can you have resources to be able to support that? And what are your costs and overhead in order to make that work? And then what type of volume are you truly needing to make a profit? How many versions of Words with Friends need to be sold before the company that built it makes a profit? Are you doing your development in-house of the app? Are you contracting it out? How long till the next release? And then you look at some of the things that those companies do. I know for myself, playing Trivia Crack, I'm quite interested sometimes to pay for those extra coins so I can eliminate some of those answers. Because that's the revenue model that they came up with. Buying extra lives in Angry Birds, all of the different items that you can do with in-app purchases became part of the revenue model that allowed the organizations to see really how and where they were going to get the revenue that they needed to make their success sustainable. But they weren't really able to make that product without the right resources. Having the right resources and processes allow for successful application development. You're not going to be able to sustain that business model unless you have the right skilled talent and skilled resources. I look at some of the apps out there that are more useful, that a MapQuest app or a weight loss app that are targeted specifically around a value proposition. I use a calorie counting app, and that app is only as good as the developers who are building it, as well as the information in the app. If I'm going into an app and the processes aren't built to update what how many calories are in a Big Mac, for example, I'm not going to go back and use the app again, and I'm not going to purchase any of the in-app additions that the company is really needing for sustainability from their product. So I look at it from a foundational component. So if we're staying in this discussion around application development, how am I managing product? How am I managing supply chain? And how am I managing my process design and management? It's going to be a little different. And if we take a step back and if we look at Nike again from a fuel band perspective, or for a development of new shoes, or a new running shirt, or a new sports jersey, how you're managing that development is going to differ a little bit than when we're looking at apps, but they're going to follow a lot of the same processes. So if I'm looking at it specifically from the lean production principles, if I'm Under Armour, if I'm Nike, if I'm Ford, if I'm Chevrolet, I'm going to focus a lot on lean. What I mean by that is really understanding the principles around understanding my value stream, understanding my value, and really looking at everything from how you're managing waste to how you're supporting and sustaining. This is a great screen when I look at really some of the keys. When I'm talking about value, it's the value by product. What is the customer's objective? What is the flow of activities in that value stream that's going to produce value for the customer? When I'm talking about that flow is how am I making sure that there's no disruptions? What am I doing from a manufacturing perspective to make sure that I'm meeting the needs of customers? How do you avoid making sure that there's enough Xboxes available in the early part of December to beat the Christmas rush? Or are you wanting to create the need and force a pull by making the prices be able to go up if those devices aren't available? And really, what's your way of making sure that you're building enough and not building too much and you don't have a lot of goods on the market? So when I look at waste related to lean, a lot of it really comes into downtime. I don't want to have to stop production on cars because I built too many cars. I look at it as a prime example, McDonald's. McDonald's pulls items on and off their menu quite frequently. And they had, I'm sure a lot of you remember a couple years ago, the Mighty Wing. It was a spicy chicken wing, actually quite good. They had Joe Flacco and Colin Kaepernick and others on television doing commercials for it. And they overestimated the need. And they produced, I believe it was 200,000 pounds of additional Mighty Wings than they ever thought that they would need. Now, that's a little different when we're talking about Mighty Wings versus building out cars for Hyundai or Honda or Toyota. But when you're looking at waste related to those items, anytime you have non-effective use of people, anytime you're dealing with inventory issues or excessive processing, it causes your cost to go up, it causes your value to go down, and it impacts your ability to make money. When we look at this from consistency and sustainability, it's how we're going about from a strategy perspective to ensure success both now and for moving forward. So if I'm looking at that value stream and I'm wanting some continuous improvement, if I'm wanting to improve my sales and my customer service, focusing on when I'm making that order and getting that product to the customer, the value and the flow. What am I doing to make customers want to buy more apps? What am I doing to make customers want to order more fuel bands or buy more Mighty Wings? What's the value of what I'm bringing to the organization? And how am I putting that value into how I'm building my product? Now, some of this is going to come back into design and services. From the Lego perspective, and you're going to see this in the upcoming cases. We're talking about manufacturing goods. When we get into the VMMC case, we're going to be talking about services. When we get into planning, we're going to be doing the change management simulation game. These are all tasks that need to be understood: the design, the planning, the control, and the improvement. For any of you that have worked for product organizations or in larger services organizations, we'll see this from a development life flow. How you're designing your goods and services, how you're planning for moving forward, what you're doing from a quality control perspective, and how do you ensure continuous improvement. Because it's going to impact how you're looking at both onshoring and offsourcing from a control perspective, as well as how you are going to manage your risk. If you're doing application development, are you building it on your own? Are you offshoring? If you're offshoring, are you offshoring domestically or internationally? I look at our help desk offering. We onshore for our 8 to 8. We offshore for our 24/7 support. But when we offshore, we're losing control because I can't walk to the person next to me that's answering those phone calls and help them in a different situation. I'm putting risk and I'm putting control into areas where I can't. So when you get into onshoring versus outsourcing, we're going to continue to discuss this in follow-on lectures. And hopefully when we come back to this slide later, understanding the differences between moderate and low control and high control and moderate control from a build-out perspective will make the most sense. I personally am prone to outsourcing. I look at books like The World is Flat, which I'm sure some of you have read in different business school courses, and focusing on key areas of business for key groups. So this marks the end of Lecture 1 of Week 2. Thank you.